Good afternoon, everyone. This is meeting number 33 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Monday, May 1st, 2017. I remind everyone today that we are televised, and so I would encourage all members and all those in the audience to please put your phones, your communication devices on airplane mode or mute, and that would be much appreciated. Today we're conducting a hearing on report number 7 of the Auditor General, Operating and Maintenance Support for Military Equipment, National Defence, from the fall 2016 reports of the Auditor General of Canada. Appearing as witness today we have Mr. Michael Ferguson, Auditor General of Canada, and Gordon Stock, Principal. Welcome. And from the Department of National Defence, we have Mr. John Forster, Deputy Minister. Welcome back. Vice Admiral Ron Lloyd, Acting Vice Chief of the Defence Staff and Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy. Mr. Patrick Flynn, Assistant Deputy Minister, Material. And Brigadier General Werner Liedtke, Director General and Deputy Chief Financial Officer. The Auditor General and Deputy Minister have opening statements, and we would invite Mr. Ferguson to begin. Welcome here. Thank you.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to discuss our 2016 fall report on operating and maintenance support for military equipment. Joining me today at the table is Gordon Stock, the principal responsible for the audit.
Examined whether National Defence managed equipment support in a cost-effective manner. We selected 6 types of major military equipment: the Globemaster Strategic Airlift Aircraft, the Cyclone Maritime Helicopters, the Chinook Medium to Heavy Lift Helicopters, the 130J Hercules aircraft, the Victoria-class submarines, and the Tactical Armoured Patrol Vehicles. Overall, we found that National Defence didn't adequately manage support for the selected equipment in a cost-effective manner, and it made some initial planning assumptions that underestimated support costs, overestimated equipment use, and under-resourced personnel requirements. Consequently, National Defence paid for a higher level of service than it used. We found that National Defence assumed that the cost to support the 130J Hercules aircraft and the Cyclone Maritime Helicopter would be no more than the cost to support the replaced equipment. This assumption was not realistic because both the Hercules 130J and the Cyclone Maritime Helicopter have increased capabilities, their systems are more complex and consequently cost more to support. We also found that National Defence did not use the selected equipment as much as it had originally planned due to delays in equipment delivery and a lack of personnel and funding for operations and maintenance. For a number of years, the funding and personnel allocated for the Victoria-class submarines, the 130J Hercules aircraft, the Globemaster aircraft, and the Chinook helicopter were significantly below what was required to meet operational and training requirements. Equipment support contracts included fixed minimum payments, but not using the equipment as planned meant that National Defence paid for a higher level of service than it used. National Defence has since renegotiated one of its equipment support contracts to improve its value for money. De plus, la Défense nationale.
Furthermore, National Defence assumed that maintenance personnel for new equipment would come from crews operating and servicing existing equipment. But this did not happen. National Defence also did not have enough trained pilots, technicians, weapons systems managers, and contracting staff. Without the right complement of personnel, equipment cannot be made available and used at the planned level of operation and training. National Defence created new oversight bodies to improve its resource management. However, we found that these oversight bodies focused on acquiring equipment and did not give as much attention to equipment support. National Defence needs to use an integrated resource management approach that incorporates all aspects of the equipment's life cycle, including acquisition, material support, and personnel from a cost and operational perspective. While it is difficult to forecast how much it will cost to support major military equipment, the decisions that national defense makes today about which equipment to buy and how it will support that equipment will have significant financial impacts for decades to come. We made 8 recommendations in our audit report. National Defense has responded that it will address each recommendation.
Opening statement, we would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson, and we'll now move to the Deputy Minister, Mr. Forster. Welcome here, and we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss the Auditor General's Fall 2016 report on operating and maintenance support for military equipment. On behalf of all of us at this table and at Defence, we'd like to acknowledge the work Mr. Ferguson and his team and Mr. Stock did in preparing the report, and his recommendations will help us improve an area that is of critical importance to national defense. En fait, peu de secteurs d'activité.
Indeed, there are few areas more important to us than operating and maintaining our equipment. From fighter aircraft and unmanned aerial vehicles to frigates and submarine to modern tanks and weapons system, from operating clothing to personal protective equipment, the Canadian Armed Forces need at their disposal and ready for deployment at a moment's notice this equipment if they are to protect Canada. If they are to defend North America, they are to contribute to international peace and security when and where the government directs. They need equipment they can depend on so that when the unpredictable happens, they can respond, just as they did when a typhoon devastated the Philippines in 2013, killing more than 6,300 people and displacing millions more. Within days, Canadian Armed Forces personnel were on the ground, delivering more than 230,000 pounds of food and more than 10,000 pounds of shelter and building materials. To implement this operation, they used a CC-144 Challenger, a CC-150 Polaris, 3 Globemasters, and 3 Griffin helicopters. And that's just air support.
What equipment our military will need next? So we do err on the side of caution. We must ensure our readiness levels are high, our stocks of spare parts are sufficient, and our women and men in uniform have access to the equipment they need when they need it. But we must also balance the needs of the forces and flexibility with the need to ensure value for money and economic benefits for Canadians. The Auditor General acknowledged this in his report. He noted there is inherent complexity and unpredictability in forecasting equipment support that cannot be eliminated, and national defense must plan above minimum needs so that its equipment is ready to respond to changing circumstances. However, he concluded that we can do better, and we certainly agree. And we welcome the Auditor General's recommendations on how we can move forward, and we're committed to implementing all 8 recommendations. Our plans to do that are in the Management Action Plan we tabled with the committee last week. And we'll be pleased to answer your questions specific to any of the 8 recommendations. I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes, Mr. Chair, to speak to 3 of the main themes that run through his report. The first pertains to planning assumptions and our need to make them stronger. And on this front, we're making some progress. In 2016, we started rolling out a new sustainment initiative that replaced the previous policy for sustainment contracts. We now bring together procurement experts from national defense, public services and procurement, and innovation science and economic development. These experts work in close cooperation with industry to identify the best approaches for in-service support for our equipment. The benefits of this collaboration are many, not the least of which is we can obtain the information necessary to determine by fleet what kind of life cycle maintenance is required, what industry can offer at what cost, and how the federal departments can leverage their collective resources and know-how to make it happen. So through the Sustainment Initiative, we are able to work with industry partners from the outset to ensure the contracts we sign give us flexibility to change our requirements. As a result, going forward, an increasing number of our contracts include provisions to enable us to adjust to changing circumstances, which is our reality. Provisions that will make the armed forces more agile and responsive and deliver greater value for money. To ensure that contracts are in the best interests of the forces and taxpayers, all of our larger in-service support contracts are now subject to a rigorous sustainment business case analysis. This includes a thorough review of possible options, ensuring the solution chosen balances equipment performance, flexibility, value for money, and economic benefits. Mr. Chair, the Sustainment Initiative still is in early days, but it is producing some promising results. As part of a pilot, which was underway while the Auditor General prepared his report, we negotiated new long-term contracts for the engines of the CF-18 Hornet, the CP-140 Aurora, and the Legacy Hercules aircraft fleets. Another recent example cited in the report relates to the Hercules aircraft. We did award the original contract to support that aircraft's maximum projected use in Afghanistan. At the end of that operation, along with a number of other factors, resulted in the fleet spending less time in the air than planned. So consequently, our sustainment requirements changed also. So we've since renegotiated the contract to better reflect our revised needs, and in doing so, we've introduced more flexible pricing based on fleet usage. And more to the point, we guaranteed greater fleet availability at lower cost. So we're confident that our new approach under this Sustainment Initiative will start to address some of the main concerns raised in the Auditor General's fall report. A second theme in the report relates to costing. Mr. Chair, complete life cycle costing for military equipment is challenging, and while some costs, such as the purchase price of a piece of equipment, are relatively easy to track, others, such as development and disposal costs, the operating and maintenance costs for 20 to 30-year period are more difficult. For instance, the life cycle cost requires we project the salaries of people who operate the equipment and those who support the equipment, be they military or civilian, or our industry partners. We must also account for the amount of fuel required to operate a fleet and its cost in any given year. Tracking some of these costs, such as an operator's time, and tying them to a specific piece of equipment will be challenging. And trying to estimate these costs is difficult, but we are making improvements since consolidating a number of our information systems into a central one, the Defense Resource Management Information System. Also, over the last 18 months, we've made improvements in our costing. Cost estimates for all planned and ongoing acquisitions have been reassessed and validated as part of our defense policy review, including incremental maintenance costs over the life of the equipment. We also now have a much more robust costing model. We have projected costs on a life cycle basis for projects such as the Future Fighter Capability Project, our fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft, and our Arctic offshore patrol ships. We're also working on a full life cycle costing of the Canadian surface combatants, the new ships for the Navy. We've increased the number of costing specialists in defense from 30 to 80, the largest in the federal government. We've instituted a rigorous program to train them. These internationally certified costers have the expertise to ensure the information is available to support the development of our departmental investment plan. Finally, the third theme of the Auditor General's report is performance measurement. Mr. Chair, we're in the early stages of developing a departmental results framework. Among other things, the framework will have to establish standardized rules for entering our performance data and validating and reviewing information systems. This means we'll be able to better access data on how we manage our in-service support, and with better data comes a better understanding of results. By this time next year, the framework will enable us to begin establishing benchmarks against which we compare our performance. It will tell us whether we're meeting our expectations with respect to equipment availability and condition, and it will highlight where we can improve. Developing performance measures and indicators now will enable us to do much more than just report on performance. They will allow us to turn data into information and information into business intelligence. As we discussed with you in January, we've also been working on amalgamating several data sources into our resource management information system, and we use that system to greater effect in several areas. Building on our work to date, we'll use DREAMIS and other analytics tools to implement the management action plan for this audit. For example, we'll use DREAMIS to track fleet availability in a way that is more conducive to measuring the effectiveness of our in-service support contracts, and that will enable us to refresh and measure through life cost information. More than 20,000 defense members use the system across Canada on ships at sea and in locations around the world. We want to expand its reach even further. As Vice Admiral Lloyd can talk to you about, the Navy's the most advanced in this area, and we hope to roll this work out into other platforms in the Air Force and Army, which is the direction we're headed. I recognize the challenge before us is sizable. We are making progress in addressing it, but we acknowledge we have much more to do. Again, I'd like to thank the Auditor General for helping us to do that. We agree with his assessment and are at work implementing his recommendations. Thank you, and my colleagues and I will be happy to take your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Forster.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forster. Mr. Lefebvre, you have 7 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
It's always interesting how data always comes back up, certainly with the Canadian Armed Forces, collecting the data, and now what to do with that data. Clearly, the auditor has been in your offices many times, and we see this theme coming back again of data management being a challenge, and I hear your comments that are positive to hear that this time we're taking matters to doing more with the data that is being collected, how we can improve the services to Canadians, certainly with the equipment support for the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, I'd like you to turn to page, and again, just in your comments, I'm very pleased to see that, and there's concrete measures, and that is great. But I'd like you to turn to page 13, sort of the report, so paragraph 7.41, because as we say in French sometimes, plus ça change, plus c'est pareil, and that's what I'm concerned about right now, is that
In French, more things change, the more they stay the same.
first time that this has been brought to the forefront. And I'd like you, at that paragraph, so and I'll read it, it says here, from the auditor's report, in our 2011 audit, we recommended that National Defence develop means of monitoring overall and equipment-specific total cost information for maintenance and repairs. In response to our recommendation, National Defence stated that by December 2013, it would use its Financial and Material Information System, the Defence Resource Management Information System, the DRMIS, to record and monitor overall and equipment-specific total cost information for its maintenance and repair activities such as personnel, contract services, spare parts, maintenance and equipment, and infrastructure costs. And at the paragraph 742, it says 7.42, we found that National Defence did not use DRMIS as the source of information on overall and equipment-specific costs for maintenance and repair, and it goes on. So at that time, the department had said, we will use the system. And the Auditor General says they did not use it fully to its capabilities. And here we are in 2017, and you're telling us again, we will use this system. how have things changed to basically now we should be confident that this system will be better used, because at the end of the day, we all agree that we were not getting value for money. So we're all concerned about that. So what specific measures can we rely on that Euro will tell us today that this will be done?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, and you'll recall we had a bit of this discussion too when we were talking about inventory. I think it was before Christmas. So previously, our information systems, we had one database for Mr. Finn's area of parts and equipment and inventory, financial records in a different system, scheduling of work and repair work in a different system. So the challenge for defense has been, how do we bring all that information together into a common place? Because we want to be able to link parts with repairs, with costing information and financial results. So DREAMIS is the system that doesn't replace all those, but it allows us to integrate the data. It allows us to take parts data from here, cost data from there, and bring it together to get an overall picture.
And how long have you been using this DREAMIS system, or having at your disposition?
Well, when I came 2 years ago, DREAMIS was partly advanced. It was a bit stalled, so we've invested considerably more money in the last 2 years to solidify DREAMIS and use it more aggressively as our main information system. We now have, for example, in the Navy. Navy uses DREAMIS, and Ron can speak to that, for parts, repair scheduling, maintenance, inventory, costing. And they're the leader in the armed forces of how we pulled that together. And our next challenge then is to roll that out. Some of the Air Force is in, some of it not. We want to roll that out across the organization, and maybe if you have a minute, I'll let Ron just speak.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. The challenge is, as we discussed before, you have data, but in and of itself, it's not information. Yeah. And so you need to take that data and you need to put it into a report, and then from that report, you can then make hypotheses and then go and challenge them, or you can make evidence-based decisions once you've got that data that conveys information and intelligence. One of the challenges that we've had with DREAMIS is that in order to reformat one of those reports, you actually have to go into the system and do that reprogramming. Subsequent in the last 2015, we actually introduced a suite of tools, business objects, and these tools allow you to rapidly access the data and then configure it in a report such that you can then make evidence-based decisions, and we're having success with respect to moving forward on that. So that's it's the tools, I guess, I would suggest is going to enable us to use that data better and more effectively to make better decisions going forward.
That. So it's basically, it's always been a learning process as to with the data and how to use it with the system, this DREAMIS system that you have. Now, how many different equipment support contracts do you guys have? Very quickly.
I manage well over 12,000.
12,000.
Yeah.
And what is the budget for these?
So so just within the material group, it's about between $5 and $6 billion a year, and there's some funds that come from elsewhere in the department. So I don't have a complete number for you, but I would say in the magnitude of $6 to $7 billion a year.
So we've had challenges, obviously, with the types of contracts that were signed, because we had, in some of the reports that I read, basically, we signed a $70 million contract for maintenance, but we only used basically 35% of it or 60% of it. So in the Auditor General's opening statements, and very thank you, it says that you guys have renegotiated, the National Defense has renegotiated one of its equipment support contracts to improve its value for money. So given that there's 12, this is one contract out of 12,000 possible contracts. So can you maybe explain further where we're at with this?
Yeah, so that specific contract is one of our larger contracts. We renegotiate all the contracts as they come due. We're introducing more performance-based into all of them. So there's a specific example. He's just describing one of the 6, not only one in total. So there's a lot more that we've done. As they come due, we're introducing the principles that we've talked about here.
Thank you, Mr. Finn and Mr. Lefebvre. Mr. McColman, you now have 7 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair. I think I'll state the obvious. This is a staggering report of poor value for money. poor systems of acquisition, poor monitoring. But that's not really where I want to go. Where I really want to go is the solutions. And I think one of the examples that are mentioned in both the Auditor General's report and your report, sir, Mr. Forrester, that is this, and I'll read from the Auditor General's point number 8. While it's difficult to forecast how much it will cost to support major military equipment, the decisions the National Defence makes today about which equipment to buy and how it will support that equipment will have significant financial impacts for decades to come. And then I'll refer to your report, sir, to us just given. Projects costed on a life cycle basis include the Future Fighter Capacity Project. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about improvements. On the purchase that has been introduced by the Minister into the House of Super Hornets without an open competition, what is the full life cycle cost of purchasing the interim fleet of Super Hornets?
Thank you. At the moment, we are developing the full life cycle cost for that acquisition. As the government announced last fall, it's entering into discussions with the U.S. government and with Boeing to determine whether we can obtain a fighter, interim fighter, with the capability we need in a time frame we need it and at a cost.
Okay,
so part of the work.
That answers the question. Thank you so much. So you're telling me that we've committed to the purchase of fighter jets without knowing the full life cost of them?
No, I'm not telling you
That's
that,
what the
sir.
Minister said in the House, sir.
No, he hasn't, sir. He has said we've gone into discussions with the U.S. government and with Boeing to look at the purchase of those fighter
Sole
aircraft.
source contract.
We have not entered into any contract with Boeing or the U.S. government to purchase the aircraft.
Thank you. Okay, great. When do you expect to have a figure?
We've issued, as the government announced, a letter of request to the U.S. government through the U.S. Department of Defense, and they are providing information back to us. We would expect that by the fall. We will then proceed to do a full life cycle costing analysis based on the information we get.
Will you provide these figures to the parliamentary budget officers when you have them?
We're happy to provide, as we're required in law, to provide costing information we have to the parliamentary budget officer. At the moment, we don't have the full life cycle cost estimate to share with him.
Should you proceed, when do you expect to take possession of the interim fleet of Super Hornets?
Well, that's part of what the process is, to determine when Boeing would be able to provide these aircraft. Would it have the capability Canada needs and at a cost that's acceptable to
How many aircraft are we talking about?
18.
18. Now, have you done an indicative estimate for the Treasury Board?
I beg your pardon?
Has your department approached Treasury Board with an indicative estimate?
Not with an indicative estimate. We've issued the letter of request to the U.S. government to get that information.
So the U.S. government is providing you with the costing information. We're not doing an internal costing inside your department.
We will do the costing analysis based on the data that we get from the U.S. government and from Boeing, based on the requirements that we have for the aircraft.
So in other words, there's a company out there that's going to give you their numbers, not competitive, meaning sole sourced. They're going to give you the numbers. The U.S. government is going to provide you with input in terms of what they see the costs are, and then you'll begin your costing based on a sole source company providing you that numbers, those numbers.
The numbers we use will come from the U.S. government.
And so you just reversed yourself there, sir. You've said that it will come from Boeing as well.
Well, Boeing will feed their work into the U.S. government. The U.S. government will do their analysis and review of it and submit it formally to Canada.
When would you expect to have a substantial estimate?
As I said, it will depend when the U.S. government responds to our letter of request. We're expecting that in the fall.
When would you expect that we would set up the infrastructure to handle this new fleet? Meaning all the technicians, all of the pilots, all of the recruitment necessary, all the training necessary, and further to that question, you might expand on for me, will all of those skills be transferable to whatever the next generation might be of aircraft should they not be Super Hornets?
We're doing the planning now. The Air Force is doing the planning around technicians, pilots, infrastructure for the Super Hornets. Some of those skills will be transferable. You're obviously going to, depending on who the winning aircraft is in the competition, there will obviously be different skills needed depending on what the final purchase
So
is.
it may not, those skills may not transfer over to what eventuality might be the long-term needs of the Canadian Air Force and military, because they may be something different than the Super Hornet. I don't want it, if I might.
That's not quite what I said. I said some of those skills are likely transferable. There will be some skills required, depending on which aircraft wins the competition, that will be needed. Each aircraft requires different training skills and equipment skills and mechanics.
You just stated that you are ramping up the infrastructure needed for the Super Hornets.
I said we're doing the planning and analysis for it.
The planning and analysis. Yes. So the planning would take resources in your department and place them into a group that would say, we need to do the planning for the Super Hornets, even though we haven't decided whether we're going to get the Super Hornets.
Yes, there's a group in the department and the Air Force that will look at both the interim fighter and both the
Would it seem like, to me, I'm a small business guy, help me, is this not putting the cart before the horse? You haven't decided. You told me you haven't decided on whether or not we're going to get value for money and the Super Hornet purchase is going to go forward, yet you're doing the planning for putting into place the infrastructure, the planning, not putting it into place, but the planning for the infrastructure for the Super Hornets.
Well, as I indicated, if we're going to do full life cycle costing of that acquisition, we have to look at what infrastructure may be needed or may not be needed. I mean, another elements of it. It's how you would acquire the equipment. It's part of the analysis we would do before the government takes a final decision on whether to acquire those aircraft. It will need the estimates and the analysis and the numbers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forster. I think we may come back to some of this. Mr. Christofferson, please. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank all our guests for being here today, our witnesses. I got to tell you, the more we get into this, and you all know how long I've been around here, I'm beginning to think that we need a separate standalone Public Accounts Committee for Defence and Aboriginal Affairs alone, because we just never seem to turn the corner. And every time the department comes in, it's always, we got it right this time. I share Mr. Lefebvre's sentiment about why should we believe this time that it's going to be different. I mean, and I agree with Mr. McColman that this is an incendiary report. And what really is problematic is not the part where we're finding new problems and what are you going to do about it. It's these ongoing problems that keep happening time after time after time. So, let's go through it again. On page 22 of the Auditor General's report, 7.85, National Defense's performance. This is the words of the Auditor General. In response to questions about our 2011 audit, National Defense told the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts that it would develop performance measures on its maintenance and repair activities in its financial and material information system by December 13. So this is an example of there's a problem and there's an offer to fix it, and they tell us, don't worry, we're going to do this, everything's fine. What does the next paragraph say? 7.86. We found that while National Defense had established performance measures in support contracts with private firms, it did not develop similar measures for its own performance. Help me understand how telling us in 2011 that you're going to deal with this issue effectively and you're going to put the measures in place, and then we find out it was only a half measure, that it was done for the private sector, but not on your own. Is there a good reason for that?
With respect to our continuing performance, as we discussed previously, it's one thing having the data, it's another thing to provide it and distill it into the information to make the decisions. As a result of the tools that we've introduced in the department most recently, we're actually beginning to see making a steady progress in some of these areas. In particular, I can think of spare parts for equipment through its supply depots. Right now, with this ability to allow the business owners, the actual Army, Navy, and Air Force, to have visibility on these parts, we're now learning that we may have some of our parts actually stored in the wrong place geographically.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to rude you. You know how this drill is. We're short on time. I specifically asked, is there a good common sense reason why, when you told us you were going to fix it, you only have fixed it?
Thank you for the question, sir. I think in the context of, I'll say, dollar amount, we're more than half. So what we've tried to do is, as we brought the systems together, is to look at where our biggest expenditure is, which is in the private sector, the support contracts. So we've been working on building the performance measures there, testing them out, using them, and now starting, as the Vice Chief has said, to roll those out to the Army, Navy, Air Force, where there are uniformed maintainers who do higher level maintenance as per the maintenance that the Auditor General describes in here. So we're trying to take the core, the most expensive pieces, build the measures, and then actually roll them out to the rest of the department.
Okay, so I assume that the second part is underway?
Yes, sir, it is. So that's
okay, just on this, before I leave this and turn to another matter, and we're going to turn to you, Auditor General, there's another matter related to this that is incredibly serious. The Auditor General stated, further 7.71, furthermore, the information National Defence presented in its annual departmental performance report on equipment availability was not meaningful. That report goes to Parliament. That's not just some internal whatever. That is your report to Parliament. Auditor General, could you briefly tell us what your concern is? What exactly does that mean when you say that the report, the information was not meaningful?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we explained that starting in paragraph 88 and 89. So I think in 89, for example, we say we found that neither the Chinook helicopter nor the 130J Hercules aircraft were included in the aggregate calculation for the performance measure of availability reported in the departmental performance report. And then at the bottom of 89, we say, we also noted that when aggregating the overall calculation, National Defence included 100% availability for the submarines, whereas its internal report showed that they were available for only 42% of the planned sea days. So our concern was that the information that was being reported publicly in the departmental performance report was in some cases inconsistent with internal information that the department had, we would have expected, I guess, that the information they were reporting to Parliament would have been the same type of information that they had internally.
Thank you. Given time constraints, I want to move on until the chair hooks me out. Page 9, the chart that we see, Exhibit 7.2, assumption. Support costs for new equipment will be the same or less than for the previous equipment. The reality? Support costs were as much as 2 to 3 times more than the previous equipment due to enhanced operational capability and additional contractor responsibilities. So your assumption, and a lot of these things is the assumption is the key thing, that everything would be fine. It'd be the same cost or less. It ended up costing us 2 to 3 times as much. Again, how did that happen?
So I think when you look at the equipment and what you're replacing it with, so you're, in a way, you're a bit comparing apples to oranges. So you had an older piece of equipment, less technology, less capability. So in the case of the new equipment, it will cost you more.
Well, but you didn't say that. So I'm sorry, sir, but you said in here under assumption that the new equipment will be the same or less. And the things you just talked about are the things the Auditor General pointed to that raise the cost that you didn't take into account first go around.
That's right. And now that we do, now that we do the life cycle costing going forward on all our major equipment that we've implemented in the last 18 months, a center of costing, we're doing life cycle costing, we will look at what the sustainment and maintenance costs are, not assuming it's the same as a 30-year-old piece of equipment. We will look at that.
You need all this high-priced help to tell you that, sir? You needed all those people with scrambled eggs on their hat to tell you that things are going to cost more when there's more
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Christofferson. We'll go to Mr. Area, please. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Foster, I'm glad to note that you mentioned the need for value for money, flexibility, and economic benefits to Canadians. Especially the economic benefits part to Canadians is the one I'm interested in. And I'm also glad to note that you're talking of the federal government, how they can leverage the collective resources. As you know that the Canadian defense industry is quite strong. We have got 63,000 employment in this sector, and 44% of that 63,000 is in Ontario. And the pay for the defense companies, the pay earned by the workers is about 60% higher than comparable jobs elsewhere. And 60% of the defense companies' revenues are through export. So my question is that what are you guys doing to commercialize the hundreds of millions of dollars we have invested in DRDC? See, a lot of, the Canada First Defense Strategy talks about the collaboration, ongoing collaboration between the Defense Department and the industry. And we also know that the Canadian defense budget in the next 20 years is higher than the oil sands capital investment. That was when oil was ruling at around $100 per barrel. So we are investing quite a bit amount in Canadian defense. How we can use that investment in the defense budget to stimulate economic growth? Specifically on DRDC, the technologies that are being developed, how we are commercializing them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So DRDC is the research and development arm of National Defense. They already do a lot of projects in cooperation with industry, but this is an issue, a really important issue we heard in the consultations on the Defense Policy Review. How can we better leverage not just our research budget, but also our procurement program to help Canadian industry deliver jobs and exports and products for Canadians. So that's an area that we're looking at quite significantly.
You're looking at, or you're taking steps to implement them?
Well, it's very much some work that we are doing as part of the Defense Policy Review, so I don't want to get out ahead of Minister Sajjan on that. But how do we better use our R&D budget to leverage Canadian jobs, exports, products, and how do we then use our procurement system?
We are investing quite sizable amounts through Strategic Aerospace and Defense Initiative. Billions of dollars we're spending on R&D. Good chunk of that goes to technology companies in the defense sector. The Canada First Defense Strategy also talked about the benefits to SMEs who have got in specific technologies, the opportunity for them to grow and become world leaders. So, I mean, this talk has been going on for years. And I've told Defense Minister 3 times, I've asked him, what is that he's doing in conjunction with the Minister of Innovation to actually do something for the Canadian defense sector?
Oh, we're doing quite a bit. I'll ask Pat as well to talk about how we use the procurement system to leverage that.
Thank you very much for the question. I think the key policy enabler is around the Industrial and Technological Benefits Program at Industry, Science and Economic Development. So in the context of you say, how are we specifically leveraging and driving it in?
ITB is there for a long time, but the benefits that were supposed to come from that is not happening.
Well, a lot of it is happening. So if you look at, for example, a project like the Canadian Surface Combatant as an example, request for proposals coming in, 10%, I think, is the number of the value has to be around small and medium enterprises, research and development, innovation. So we're already seeing, through the application of the policy, direct implications for Canadian companies, small and medium enterprises.
Sorry, the time is short. One specific segment in the defense sector is the C4ISR. Ottawa, we have got 1,700 knowledge-based companies. We have the technology talent. We have everything that is required. We have a model in Washington, Annapolis Belt. There are hundreds of small companies that cater to this particular sector. Is there anything you can do to promote small technology companies in Ottawa to specialize in C4ISR?
So again, if I could, that's where, as we're working with ISED, and again, they lead this area for the government. So what we're doing around key industrial capabilities is, in fact, to identify that as a key industrial capability, to leverage it using intellectual technological benefits to drive it into a lot of our products.
Once again, KICs we have been talking around, but I'm looking at when the action will actually start.
It has started in a number of things that are being bid in. Beg your pardon. If I look at fixed wing search and rescue and a number of other areas, it's actually Canadians who are doing a lot of the integration around the C4ISR solutions. It is small and medium enterprises who are actually being leveraged.
Okay, and I hope you guys look into the interaction between DRDC and the industry takes to next higher level. I've been told by a lot of technology companies here it's very, very difficult for them to understand the actual customer's needs. It's very difficult to get and talk to the end customer because of the security requirements for anybody to enter DRDC premises and actually have a meeting.
We've also heard the same comments as we're doing the policy review. So again, if you can be patient another short while longer, I think you'll see that addressed.
Okay, you also mentioned about Defense Resource Management Information System. Whenever somebody talks about information management system, the flags goes up for us. We have seen Phoenix, we have got these shared services, etc. Are you facing any problems in there?
Flags go up with me too, believe me. And as I said, when I came to the department, I think DREAMIS had kind of stalled because it was trying to become one system where all the data went into it. We've completely changed our approach to that. It will sit on top and grab data from other systems rather than trying to build.
My thing is that are you getting enough area? So are you getting resources to implement this? And last question is, you mentioned it's very difficult to estimate the cost of various programs we talked about. What is the experience in US, UK, or France in terms of their costing?
Someone has very short period of time to answer that. Mr. Finn.
Very similar to ours. In fact, we share best practices, and they have the same challenges that we have.
Thank you. We'll now move back to the opposition and to Mr. Generou, please. You have 5 minutes.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, you guys, for being here today, taking time out of your day to be here. I do want to come back to Mr. Forster on some of the questioning that my colleague beside me was asking, particularly with the life cycle cost of purchasing the interim fleet of Super Hornets. There was a National Post article, February 2nd, 2017, where it says, I quote, Minister of Defense, Sajjan, announced in November the government's decision to buy 18 Super Hornets as interim fighter jets until a permanent replacement for the existing CF-18 aircraft could be bought. So on that line of thought, was hoping that you could tell us what was included, what's excluded, and over how many years the life cycle cost for this would be analyzed for.
Thank you for the question. I think if you read the actual announcement of the government, it did not say it has decided to buy. It has decided to enter into discussions with the U.S. government and with Boeing to look at the possible purchase of 18 interim aircraft. Part of the reason we're not making any decision to buy is we need information on capabilities, costs, schedule, and economic benefits for Canadians. That letter of request, as I mentioned, has gone to the U.S. government, and that's the information that the government will then look at before finalizing any decision to purchase.
And I understand that, and that's similar to what your response was earlier, Mr. Forster. However, it's obvious that the minister is preparing to go down this path. So is he going down this path without the support of the department? And I'll read you one more quote. This one directly from Hansard in question period, where the minister states, "We are investing into the legacy fleet as well. Plus, we are buying new Super Hornets." I don't know how clear that is. They're obviously buying the Super Hornets, so we're asking for the estimated full life cycle cost of purchasing them. Do you not have that? Is that you mentioned that you're planning to do it, but can you help us out here, because it sounds like the minister is buying these things, but it doesn't sound like you're in the loop on that he's buying these things.
Well, I would draw your attention to what the government's announcement is, and when we get the response from the U.S. government to the letter of request, that will provide us the information on which we'll base a life cycle cost analysis of that those planes, and the government will then make a decision on whether it wants to proceed.
So you don't have the life cycle cost.
That's what I've said. We're getting the That's why we're getting the information as part of our letter of request from the U.S. government. That will be we will then do that and do our own analysis and challenge of those numbers and develop a life cycle cost estimate in the fall.
And I can appreciate if you don't have the information, you don't have the information. But then why is the minister going and saying, quote, we are buying new Super Hornets? Why would you go down this road without having the costs associated with it? That's as a guy from Alberta, this doesn't seem to jive where I'm from. You would go and you'd buy something if you have the estimated full cost of it. But you're saying you don't have the estimated full cost. The minister said we're buying them, so I'm struggling to understand where exactly there's the disconnect. Is the minister going alone on this? Is that your opinion, perhaps?
Of course not, Mr. Chair. The minister's not going alone. He's working with his colleagues, the Minister of Procurement
he doesn't appear
and
to
the
be.
Minister of Industry Science in a whole of government effort to look at whether the government should acquire 18 interim aircraft.
Well, I don't think there's any should. According to the minister's comments, you're acquiring them. So,
Mr. Chair,
Point of order. Mr. Christopherson on a point of order.
Chair, I'd ask you to rule. I do this reluctantly because they're close colleagues, but to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing in here about what's being asked in the Auditor General's report. Questions like that properly belong at the Defence Committee. That's why we have that committee. This is about the report. I'd ask my colleague to keep his... It's not fair to our witnesses. I mean, they came in prepared to address the report. Now we're getting into active politics. It's almost like question period. That is the antithesis of what we should be doing here. Chair, I'd ask you to step in, please.
All right, I think Mr. McColman earlier quoted the area in the report where the Super Hornet could fall under question. And I would remind all colleagues to try to stick to the report. I try to give as much leeway on other issues, not just on this one. But I will point us to the report, and I tended not to say that it was out of order. I think your questioning is in order, but I would make sure that you stick to perhaps a little closer to the actual report.
Fair comments. Appreciate that, Chair. Addressing page 3 on the Deputy Minister's report here, where he, quote, the need to ensure value for money, flexibility, economic benefits for Canadians, and at the bottom of it he says what kind of life cycle maintenance is required. So trying to get to the bottom of exactly what's happening at the minister's office and what's happening at the deputy minister's office, I find there's a complete disconnect here, and we're just looking for the economic estimates of what this will cost, the training, the new technicians and pilots, how much for the maintenance, and so on and so forth. So I'll end my comments with that. If you have anything to add, Mr. Forster.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think I've answered the question. I've explained where the government's position, and all of that analysis and work is being done and will be done before the government decides whether to purchase an interim fleet.
Thank you, Mr. Forster. We'll now move back to Madam Mendez and Ms. Shanahan on a split.
Ms. Shanahan first.
Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you, Chair.
5 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Christopherson, for your interjection earlier, because I too am more interested in looking at the situation now and how we're improving it going forward. I am distressed with the fact that we had a previous Auditor General's report 2011 that improvements were not made adequately at that time, that we have to come back at this time. But, that was the past. This is the present. And in reading the Auditor General's report, what hit me as a former commercial banker who did finance large pieces of equipment was the fact that the basic business assumptions hadn't been made, that there were not proper costing estimates being made. There seemed to be a lack of training both on the costing side and then on the support side, which I remember well, both as a banker and certainly in the with the entrepreneurs that I dealt with, that was thoroughly studied, often over months, if not years, before major pieces of equipment were indeed purchased. So I am heartened and I am encouraged to hear that that is indeed what's going on now. So I would like to ask Mr. Forster actually to expand a little bit on first of all, the personnel that has been engaged to do that kind of independent costing, because I think that is critical. And then I'd like to hear a little bit more about the value for money contracts, because that certainly concerned me that there was sort of a fixed cost service contract arrangement before. Now we're going to a flexible, because the Defense Department, obviously a major purchaser, a major buyer. Businesses want to do business with us.
Thank you. I'll touch a little bit on the costing and then ask Pat to speak to the contracts. I totally agree with you on costing. So I think a lot of the work of national defense had originally been more in the acquisition costs and not looking, and I think previous work of the Auditor General, particularly around the F-35, showed we need to do better work on life cycle costing. That is what we do now. As I said, we've developed a much expanded Center of Defense Costing that's gone from 30 to 80 people, international certification. As part of the defense policy process, we've looked at all the costing of our projects. We've done that with international expertise, and we've had accounting firms come in and review that, and that is the way we go forward on all the major purchases.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? Like what kind of sort of out of the, because let's face it, when you're in a certain encadrement, it's hard to get that independent information. So where are you going to get that independent costing information? Are you working with outside suppliers? Are you working with allies?
Exactly. So we're working with a firm that's done costing work with our allies as well, so that we're benefiting from the global experience to enhance our costing as well. So we have in-house now a very robust, large team. I would say, as I said, largest probably costing team within the federal government. And we're using outside experts, consultants that have work in that field to draw on their knowledge, their costing experience with some of our closest allies, and getting information as well from other countries. So all of that is now going in. We've also, in some of our major platforms, built in third-party challenge functions. So it's defense will do the costing, and then we're bringing in outside experts to challenge, review that costing, so the minister is getting an assurance that he feels the work was done well. So we're really trying to improve our costing. We spent investing a lot of money to do that because we think it's absolutely critical.
Okay, very good. And then on the contracts?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So thank you for the question. We don't have a fixed price contracts for maintenance. What we have sometimes is a fixed floor. So a lot of what's being described here is I'll say a minimum payment. And the evolution of the in-service support contract, so 20 years ago, largely time and material contracts where we had a large workforce, we would break out the equipment, have well over 12,000 contracts, and we'd send them out time and material, which meant for companies the solution to more profit was to take more time or do more material. We have evolved, so we went through a concept, a lot of what you're reading about in this report, the in-service support contracting framework, where we tried to turn a lot more over it to the original equipment manufacturers, have found that by virtue of the size of our contracts relative to international allies don't always give us the power that we want. So we've evolved it yet again to the sustainment initiative to provide a lot more of the flexibility that you describe. And a lot of the performance we're looking for, which we think is better value, is not just how much we're paying for maintenance, but ensuring that we're not doing maintenance that we don't need. And so we are incentivizing industry. I often say to people, is the maintenance we do on our cars all the right maintenance, or if we could go into a dealership and really negotiate that I'll pay you more for less maintenance, are you prepared to do it? Hard to do with a single car, but something that we feel in a number of areas we have the economies of scale to do. And in our early pilots, we've seen some really good results here. The deputy talked about engines where we've seen quite a significant return. The renegotiation of the C-130J, the Hercules, which is talked about in the report here. So after the first 5 years, where we built, I would say, a degree of knowledge, as did our allies, we've now renegotiated that with a pretty significant reduction in price. But a lot of it, again, is the performance saying to them, if you reduce the amount of maintenance we have to do on these aircraft, we'll actually share the savings with you. That's a lot of what we're after now, is to really change the mindset of how we contract, but therefore also of our workforce in developing those contracts. And there's a lot of complexity to it.
Thank you very much. We'll now move back to Mr. McColman. Mr. McColman, we're on the second round still. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Back to Mr. Forster. Sir, could I refer you to page 5 of your verbal report today and the print, the transcript you've given us of your report. I want to move down to the fourth paragraph. Over the past 18 months, I'll read it. The cost estimates for all planned and ongoing acquisitions were reassessed and validated, including the incremental maintenance costs over the life cycle, over the life of the equipment. Even more significantly, we now have a much more robust costing model. Projects costed, past tense, costed, on a life cycle basis include the Future Fighter Capability Project, the fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft, and the Arctic offshore patrol ships. We are working on full life cycle costing for the Canadian surface combatants. Of the 3 mentioned in the first sentence, are they costed or are they not?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fighter replacement project that refers to is the full replacement that the government has announced. So that would have been, those were costed under the former government when the government was looking, the policy was to look at buying F-35s. So that's not the interim fighter, that's the full replacement of the entire fleet.
So
so in November, the government, along with the interim, announced that it would be proceeding to a full, open and transparent competition on those.
Okay, so I can assume then from your sentence that all of these 3 mentioned, including the fixed-wing search and rescue aircraft and the Arctic offshore patrol ships, have all been costed.
Have been fully costed, yes, sir.
On the new, using the new, more robust costing model?
Warner, you want to speak to that?
Yes, that would be correct, sir. What we've done is, as we've mentioned, we've instituted a more professionalized costing certification, and through that we've developed more robust standards, and those standards were applied on these costings.
Thank you. Now, with regards to the department's response to the Auditor General's report, I'm going to quote, and this is your department's response to recommendation 7.48. National Defence stated that by the end of 2017, quote, it expects to deliver a plan that identifies individual acquired goods and services investments over $20 million, as well as life cycle costs on a program basis, end of quote. That was your response. In addition, another quote, National Defence will update and monitor life cycle costs at key decision points, end of quote. What is National Defence rationale for choosing the threshold of $20 million?
Thank you for the question. Really, it's the magnitude of the volume of the contracts that we do. If we develop the investment plan with every single contract over $1 million, it would just be cumbersome and burdensome to do. So we use the material threshold at this time with the view of as we move forward, because in the IP 2014 we actually did not include acquired goods and services at all. So this would be the first major step forward, and then we would look at that threshold as we move forward.
Fair enough. I interpret that as anything under $20 million isn't going to be under the rigorous costing models. Next point. How will National Defence update?
No, sir, that's not correct.
Okay. It said you will do these things. I quoted it. but based on everything over $20 million?
No, we would be including within the investment plan, we would identify as a specific item those contracts over $20 million, but we apply the same rigor for all contracts.
Okay, thank you for that. How will National Defence update and monitor the life cycle costs at key decision points? How will you do that?
Sir, what we do, the key decision points usually are when a project hits the development and implementation stage. So that's really when we go from an indicative cost estimate to a substantive cost estimate. So that's the time that we'll update the planning assumptions and we'll apply the rigor at that point for decision.
Okay. Back to where my colleague, Mr. Christofferson, was going. Can't help but think, again, from the Auditor General's scathing report as summarized here in an executive summary today as presented. Is there any reasonable expectation that we could get, I suppose, a reasonable response from you in terms of what's been learned through all of this poor management?
Well, I think I would make a couple of points. It's a very good question. So one, as we've indicated, we're going to always want to continue to improve our contracts for maintenance and support. So there was a previous government policy on how to do those in 06, Pat? 07. While it gave us a lot of flexibility, it did so at not as good value for money as we should have. So now we've evolved into a new form of support contracts that we hope to use, gives us the ability to make sure we've got the support we need to make sure the equipment's available, but allow us to control and manage our costs better. The lesson learned on costing is the full life cycle costing. That's why we've stood up a defense costing center and are implementing full life cycle costing. Performance measurement is still going to be a good challenge for us. We're going to have to take to Treasury Board for approval a performance framework this year. The minister will have to present and get approved. And then we're going to have to make sure we can kind of monitor and collect the data to do that. In monitoring full life cycle costing, though, we're still going to have a challenge. So if I have a maintenance technician and he's spending part-time on one equipment and part-time on another equipment, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to monitor and track that, as the Auditor General has asked us to do, to compare those. So I think there's continually going to be lessons learned. There's always going to be improvements we want to make. As I said, we're making some good improvements, but yeah, we've got a lot more work to do, and we'd be the first to acknowledge that.
Thank you very much. Just to our committee, I'll tell you that we have another hour, and I think there'll be ample time to keep coming back, but I'm still trying to keep within the confines, stretching a bit perhaps, but within the confines of our timeline. So Mr. Chen, please, and we'll have split time here.
Thank you very much. And to be honest, I don't know where to begin because there's so much in this report, but let me just start off by saying that national defense, you have the task of purchasing, you have the task of supporting, and then you have the task of staffing. And based on the Auditor General's report, it looks like in 3 areas you've gone wrong. So on the first, in terms of purchasing, you've overestimated equipment use, you've overpurchased. With respect to support, you have underestimated the cost of providing that support to the equipment. And then in terms of staffing, you have under-resourced the personnel requirements. So let me just pick one. I'll go to the support of equipment. And Mr. Forster, you said earlier that while some costs, such as the purchase price of a piece of equipment, are relatively easy to track, others, such as the development and disposal cost and the operating and maintenance costs over a 20 to 30-year period, are not. And I think as reasonable people, we can certainly appreciate that type of explanation. However, in the Auditor General's report, it was also pointed out with respect to the use of incremental funds, that money that was specifically allocated for particular purposes was not used for that purpose. And there's an example that the Auditor General gave in his report that $115 million was provided in the 2014-15 fiscal year to support the Chinook helicopter, and 137 million per year thereafter. And part of that money was not spent for that purpose. And what's worse is that there wasn't any monitoring from National Defense. So my question is in two parts. First, to the Auditor General, beyond that finding, were you able to provide any type of assessment in terms of how this happened? Was this a blatant disregard to what is expected by the Treasury Board, which is that when incremental funds from the government is allocated for a specific purpose, that money be used for what it was allocated for? And my second question is to Mr. Forster. What happened there?
Forster? Or Mr. Ferguson, please.
In the report, what we did was we reported what we found. Obviously we are not party to any conversations that may have gone on around this, but fundamentally Treasury Board, as we say in paragraph 49, requires that these types of funds be tracked. We look to see how the money was spent. We talk about the case of the Globemaster aircraft. National Defence was allocated $140 million a year in incremental funding for the Globemaster aircraft support, but spent only $79 million in the 2015-16 fiscal year. And then we talk about trying to sort of track money that wasn't spent. So. Based on our understanding, there was an expectation from Treasury Board that these earmarked funds would be tracked and that the department would be able to report on them. But in a number of the examples that we cite here, we found that the money wasn't. We couldn't see where the money was spent on that equipment, and we couldn't see what else it was spent on. And that's essentially simply the situation as we found it.
Mr. Liedtke.
Thank you very much for the question. With respect to bringing in money from the fiscal framework, generally in the past, the in-service support has been an average amount throughout the life of the asset. So there is a clear understanding with Treasury Board that in some years the amount will be below the average, and we will retain the money and retain it within the in-service support envelope. But in other years there'll be more, where again we would manage it within the envelope, and if it gets higher. But what we're doing in the future to overcome this issue is we're actually now mapping out the actual estimated cost over the life of the assets, and we're profiling it year over year to move away from using averages. The other thing we've done is, in the past, the amount was based on the overall average, where now we're actually phasing it in slowly. So for example, with the MHLH helicopter, we phase the amount in over a number of years to get to the steady state of the $137 million that's identified in the report.
Seconds.
I was going to split my time with
you were right.
my colleague, but I guess I've taken it all.
That's right. You were. The time clock didn't recognize that, though, that they were going to split. So we're going to go back to Mr. Christofferson, and fear not, we will get back to you. Mr. Christofferson.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. Back to the chart on page 9. And at some point, even our discussions will turn the corner and look forward, but we've got to do an adequate job of looking at where we've been. So I had pointed out earlier that the cost for new equipment, the assumption was that the support cost for new equipment will be the same or less, and it ended up being 3 times as much. I also want to bring attention to the third part of that chart, where it said the assumption, the level of effort for support activities is predictable. So that was the assumption, that they assumed that the level of effort for support activities would be predictable. When we see what actually happened, the level of effort for submarine maintenance was significantly more than expected, and that's putting it mildly, given that the estimated in-depth maintenance that National Defence estimated would take less than 1 year per submarine at a cost of $35 million each. Okay. And although the in-depth maintenance period was reduced from 6 years to 4 years for each sub, the most recent one cost, hang on, we went from $35 million projected to $321 million. I mean, we can all understand a near miss, but wow! Please help me understand how we went from an assumption that basically said, hey, don't worry, everything will be predictable, it all looks good, we'll be able to do this. You thought that was going to be about $35 million, and you ended up at $321 million. Like, help me with this, please.
Or Mr. Finn, who can help him?
You must be ready for it. I'm sure you are. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So a number of factors, and some of which you point at, rightfully so, and the Auditor General points at. So historical costs, are they the best indication of future costs? The answer is no. At times when we're doing some of these things, and again, a period without the costers we have today, the only data we have is historical costs. And that's part of it, and that's something that we've been working on and improving. I think just to point out, though, from the 35 to the 321, if I could call it, the contractual costs, part of that is lessons learned in that contract and how we're doing maintenance. So, for example, it's not an overall increase, it's what we've brought into the contract. It includes other maintenance that we were doing as heavy maintenance through other contractual vehicles, which we found to have the economies of scale of bringing it all into the Victorian Service Support contract. So that accounts for some of the increase, which again is not a cost increase, but it's an increase in the use of that contract. There's a lot of it which is capital improvements, that is not maintenance. So we do this, and particularly in a ship or submarine, when you have it taken apart to do maintenance, if you're going to change sonars and periscopes and torpedoes and communications, the time to do that work is while you're doing the maintenance. So again, capital projects approved separately. The contract becomes the vehicle by which we do the installation. So it's not an increase in maintenance cost entirely. The other thing is we re-looked at the approach to maintenance, and it says in here, again, when we acquired the Victoria-class submarines, very little time at sea, not a good understanding of what is an extremely complex platform, which has dire consequence if you have major system failure. And so at first we looked at about a 4.5-year cycle and then about 1.5 years in heavy maintenance. What we've been able to do is bundle together a lot more of the heavy maintenance, and now we've evolved all the way to a 9-year cycle with then putting the boat into maintenance for 3 years. So certainly it is an indication of some of the things you're pointing at, sir, which is an underestimation of maintenance in that. But there's other factors at play here, which includes bringing more maintenance into the contract from elsewhere, capital investments that are occurring in this, and the periodicity of the maintenance, which is to say we're actually doing more in-depth and deeper maintenance less often, but it's taking longer, sir.
Mr. Christopherson, you're 1.5 minutes over. I'll give you a summary, or we can come back to you in the next round.
How about I just ask one quick question with that, Chair, and then I'm ready to move into another area next time if I get a chance. Yes. So I'm just curious, did you give that explanation to the Auditor General? Because I'm led to believe it looks like apples and apples here, and you're suggesting part of the answer is apples and oranges. Did the Auditor General's office know that? I mean, because I get what you're saying. That would explain, something has to explain it. But it would also seem to me that you would have explained that to the Auditor General, who would have reflected that in the report.
I can't speak to the specifics of it. I mean, we had many engagements. I engaged several times with some of the principals and others. We went through some of these areas. I mean, I think the point is that of the $35 million, it did not include a lot of the capital costs, so capital improvements. So we went through a fair bit of this.
If there's anything left, if I could ask the Auditor General just to comment on what he's just heard in the last couple of moments I have.
Mr. Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair.
Either or.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only other thing that I would add to that is at the time that those submarines were purchased, which is a considerable period of time ago, there wasn't a lot known of that as to how much it would cost. So that at the time that the $35 million was put forward, it was put forward based on an absence of information. As well, we were told that they had to build supply chains in order to be able to have the parts, in order to be able to actually do the in-depth maintenance that was needed, and also to develop the procedures. So we understood that it's not entirely apples to apples, but at the same time, it's an absence of information to more information.
Again, lack of data, perhaps. Mr. McColman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Referring to the Auditor General's report, number 7, operating and maintenance support for military equipment, national defense. Well, before I go there, though, I want to go back to Mr. Forster. Sir, I come from a small company, a contracting company that I owned. There's a simple way to track your costs. You said it's very difficult, very complex to track actual costing and allocate it to something. In my era, being a dinosaur that I am, it was called timesheets. So every one of my employees filled out 2 hours spent replacing the toilet, 3 hours spent doing trim work to the door. And then those were brought back to the office, and we inputted them into our database of the costing for that job to know at the end of the job what we had spent against what we had costed the job to cost and whether we had made any money or lost money on that job. That was in the days before a lot of sophistication. I watch people coming doing work for me these days. They bring a little one of these in, the plumber or the carpenter. There's a program. They mark in the number of hours they do on a particular project. Some of these companies have codes for the type of work it is. It goes into a database. It gets funneled through an electronic system. There's no more transcribing in the office. Saves staff inside, transcribing into the costing file, the hard paper copy. This is how it's done today, I believe, although I'm not in the business for over, since 1996. That said, how come it's so complicated?
And that's a completely understandable, good way to look at it. Now, for us, that's for if you're doing the repair work on your piece of equipment. So for us, it's not just to do life cycle costs, it's not just the repair work, and we do track repair costs. It's when we get into the full life cycle costs, which means the operation of that piece of equipment. So in Vice Admiral Lloyd's case, I have a major ship. It's going to have 100 different systems. Weapons, technology, computers, propulsion, engines. So for me to track the full life cycle costs, I've got to track the operating costs of 100 different systems on that ship. So if I have 5 sailors running that ship, how do we attribute the cost to the engine, to the weapon system, to the radar system, etc.? So we actually are going to do, in terms of repair and maintenance and support, that part, as I said in my remarks, is probably easier for us to do. The harder part is how do I track kind of the operating costs and attribute it to specific pieces of equipment or a specific system on a ship, for example.
I'll tell you how you do it. In this modern world of computers, you have a category for everything right down to replacing the screw that came loose on that hinge. So in today's modern technology, sir, it is possible. And if you have a category where you cannot define it, you have the category called undefined. And you put it in that category and you ask the person who's executing to describe what it is they did because they cannot find a category for it. So I'm just illustrating for you simply the fact that in a modern system, a modern database tracking system, cost tracking system, we're not talking about here about estimating what the costs will be. We're not talking about that.
No,
We're talking about what you said earlier, that it gets very complex and very difficult. I would ask you to explore the types of databases available to do that. Now, as we move on, though, I do want to ask you just in relation to the report, the operating and support and military costs, where I was going, how do you define life cycle costs? What is included in life cycle cost, and what is excluded, and over how many years do you determine life cycle costs?
Thank you for the question. So the life cycle cost estimate is basically looking at from cradle to grave. So there's really 5 phases. There's the development work to determine the what you need on the asset. Then there's the acquisition itself of the asset. There's the sustainment cost, which is the maintenance side. There's the operating of the asset itself, and then the disposal of the asset. So those are the 5 components of the life cycle cost.
Thank you.
Just on the point of how long you do that will depend on the asset. So on the surface combatants, it's going to be, when we do life cycle costing, it's going to have to be 50 years plus, depending on how long we're going to use those ships.
Thank you.
Mr. Forster. We'll now move back to Madame Mendez.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Very much, Mr. Chair. I'll also share my time with my colleague. My question goes back to how you seek data and how you process it. I would like to ask the question to Mr. Stock, if you don't mind. When you did a study for this report, I'll read it because I don't know it by heart. Do you think these new central systems for data and resource management, the DRMIS, do you think that it is the answer to all of these challenges you faced for so many years at National Defense? Does this allow you to manage data throughout the life cycle of the equipment? First, we see this problem throughout the government, but the whole question of data management, yes, it's very complex, I understand that, but how can we make sure that we have what is necessary in place as a system? So are you sure of this?
I think that the best way to look at this is that there are a number of different parts of the system, the Defense Resource Management Information System. Some that relate to the personnel costs, some that relate to the inventory costs, all the way through. So if within the planning side of it, when you're trying to do that life cycle costing at the beginning in the planning stage, you need to be able to know how the equipment's going to be used. What's the planned use of the equipment? You need to know the personnel, how many personnel you're going to need, your parts, everything to do with that. So yes, that is very complex. But that full life cycle costing, as the equipment is used, you get more information, and that should be updated. And so that's really where we were looking at within the report, as far as using that life cycle information on an equipment basis. Like each type of equipment, you would track it for the major pieces of equipment, and so that you would know whether or not it is actually performing as expected.
Mais croyez-vous que le système actuel va permettre de le faire?
Think the current system is working? Does it allow you to do this? Do you think that the DRMIS will allow you to do this?
A state of development, because it is not integrated in the same way in terms of the human resource side, along with the planned use. One of the difficulties is that if the equipment is not used the way it was planned to begin with, then you're left with contracts that were set up to use it in a different way. You end up not having the value for money that you were looking for. Or you have not had the equipment in place to be able to do the training, so that then it is not used as much from that side. So it takes about 5 different areas that need to be continually worked on and put together and integrated. And I believe that is looking...
a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, and it is looking as though there is going to be progress, but we still have to see that.
Merci beaucoup. Je passerai maintenant.
Thank you very much. I'll share my time with my colleague.
For Mr. Ferguson. In 2011, your office's report maintaining and repairing military equipment stated, quote, there was a lack of cost and performance information, as well as a significant gap between the demand for maintenance and repair services and the funds available. To your 2016 report, it's outlined today in paragraph 3 of your outline here. National Defense made some initial planning assumptions that underestimated support costs, overestimated equipment use, and under resource personnel requirements. Back to point 6, National Defense did not have enough trained pilots, technicians, weapon system managers, and contracting staff to carry out maintenance maintenance work for new equipment. So, with all that in mind, my question is this, and it comes from the perspective of not just me as a member of Parliament, but I want to ask on behalf of constituents and taxpayers. These are, from an outsider's perspective, and with hindsight in mind, simple mistakes that shouldn't have been made. But why are they made? Not just with respect to what's happened in national defense, but as this committee I know has heard before, with respect to other departments, and I know you've written your office has written a number of reports over the years that outline mistakes that are made that lead to the ineffective and inefficient use of funds. Again, from a taxpayer's perspective, these mistakes shouldn't be made, but all too often they are. What are some potential patterns that you've identified throughout all this? Is it the complexity inherent in this sort of work in terms of purchasing, lack of communication, silos within departments, for instance? What sort of patterns could you point to? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Fergus-Dacos. Mr. Ferguson.
Well, I think perhaps what I want to start with is just why life cycle costing, for example, is important. And, when you're dealing with this type of equipment, and we've heard about the complexity, right? We've heard about, how much the equipment costs, how long the equipment's going to last, how many people are needed to support it, how many people are needed to operate, all of the costs, fuel and other things that go into operating it, maintaining inventories. It's extremely complex. So whenever a significant piece of equipment is being purchased, that significant piece of equipment can have a significant impact on the budget of the department for many years to come, right? So the idea about life cycle costing isn't about trying to tell departments you need to be able to figure out how much a replacement bolt is going to cost 25 years from now. It's about telling departments that they need to make sure they're doing a good job of understanding when they buy a piece of equipment, what's the impact of that going to be going forward. And I think in here, one of the things that we particularly identified, and I think this is a common issue in other large projects, goes back to the assumptions. Okay, so one of the assumptions that we highlighted and has been talked about today a number of times is the assumption that the cost to maintain and support the new equipment would be no more than the cost to maintain and support the old equipment. So at the time, and I think one of the things that that bothers me, I guess, a bit about today is that the people that made the decisions and the people that made the responses to us in 2011 are not the people that are here today that are having to try to defend why the department said they would get some of these things fixed by now and they haven't got them fixed. But when you go back to some of these decisions and, the support cost for new equipment would be the same or less than the previous equipment, and I think I said it in my opening statement, that just was not a realistic assumption. And it's important for these assumptions to be realistic so that the departments understand when they're buying a significant complex piece of equipment, is that going to significantly change how many people you have supporting it, how many technicians there need to be, what the operations are even in terms of military personnel for the new pieces of equipment, because it's going to be different. So starting with an assumption, for example, that it's not going to be different, quite frankly, isn't a realistic assumption. So I think one of the things to draw from this, is very much the importance of, or two things, is the importance of life cycle costing, not down to the nuts and bolts issue, but from the point of view of how is this going to impact long term, and in what pattern the budget of the department, and just the importance of having good planning assumptions that are realistic to help you understand what that impact's going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Christofferson.
Thanks, Chair. And I very much appreciate, Mr. Ferguson, those last few remarks, because anybody who's watching this, and I know there are people who follow these kind of matters carefully, would recall where this became a cause célèbre in the recent past was on the F-35. And it was a huge factor, billions of dollars. And it would seem that we're getting closer, but we're still not there. But we seem to be getting closer. If I could turn to page 16, Chair. Page 7.59. I'm quoting, in certain cases, the contracts reflected a reduced number of flying hours or a startup period before reaching the expected steady state. We found that actual usage was below original expectation due to a lack of personnel and funding for operations and maintenance. Excuse me. In the 2015-16 fiscal year, actual equipment usages compared with their expected steady rates for the CC-130J Hercules aircraft, Globemaster aircraft, and Chinook helicopter were 62%, 80%, and 39%. So can you just, I mean, common sense dictates that if you don't use it as much, you're not going to achieve the savings. But just somebody talk to me about this, because I understand there's a lot of things connected with that, budget cuts and that, but is there not some mechanism that like for instance, does the minister know when they make a decision to reduce personnel or funding, are these kind of things brought to them that, look, this has a domino effect down the road? Because that's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to understand how things could be so far off, but also, is this connected to other decisions that have an impact on it?
Well, I'll just say a few words, then I'll turn to Pat. Two things. So when those all of these contracts predated how we are approaching it now. So we locked in kind of a fixed level of support, and then you pay the increment. And a lot of that would have been to make sure that we have more than enough support, so that if we end up using the plane, you can't predict crises in the world, you can't predict where your planes need to fly. We have well covered. So as Pat indicated earlier, the new kind of contract we're trying to sign for that has tiered pricing. So we're not locked in. So when we have either we're finished in Afghanistan and we no longer use the plane as much, or we have budget cuts, which were put in place we had $2 billion of budget cuts to deal with. You can adjust your contracts going forward, and that's what we've talked about in terms of the new kind of contract we're trying to sign. I don't know, Pat, did you want to add anything?
Thank you for the question. I'll just add, in separating out I think the two key points the Auditor General made, importance of life cycle costing, but the good planning assumptions. If you look at the main fleets we're talking about here, all acquired and looked at the service support contract during the height of our mission in Afghanistan. So if you think about how much we were using the previous generation of Chinooks, how much we were using C-130J, et cetera, during a fairly large campaign on the ground with troops dying because of improvised explosive devices. So we were operating those fleets to the levels we're talking about here. Where we stumbled, I think it was perhaps a rational assumption that we would continue to use it at that levels, and therefore structured it accordingly to make sure we would have the capacity, because what we don't want to find ourselves is, I'm saying to the chief, yeah, I know, chief, you've got a mission, you've got to deploy here, but I don't have a support contract. No. But admittedly, structuring it in a way that says we're going to use all these hours is where we erred. As we renew them, as we've done in the C-130J, which is the same contract, but when it came up for a renewal period, we went back to the original equipment manufacturer, Lockheed Martin, based on international practice as well, and reduced it. As the Chinooks come forward and the other ones come forward, we'll do the same. We'll band them and tier them, but we want to make sure that we get good value for money. But there is a threshold at which we have to pay for the readiness for industry to be there and ready to surge. It's just to make sure that we're not paying a ridiculous amount for a small hour, sir, and that's what we're trying to change.
Which we have been up till now.
There's certainly examples where we've absolutely done that, and that's where, as we've negotiated C-130J as we move to the others, the new contracts and the new fleets we're bringing into place now follow much more of the sustainment initiative, and you asked about lessons learned, to make sure we adopt that lesson.
Deputy, you look like you were getting, I'm sorry.
No, if I can just add, looking forward, so there's the force posture and readiness is a mechanism, it's a tool by which the Chief of Defence Staff sets the readiness across the fleets of the Canadian Armed Forces. One of the things that we'll start to use DRIMIS in these new tools will be to take a look at how we're actually delivering that force posture and that readiness across the board. In the Navy, as the Deputy Minister indicated, we've adopted business practices, if you will, because that's the way you're going to maximize your profits. And unlike business, where you measure profits in terms of dollars and cents, we measure our profits in terms of increased personnel, material, and combat readiness. And so these tools will help us be able to do that. We'll then take a look at what we planned to expend in terms of hours on aircraft as an example, sea days in ships, and kilometers in vehicles as an example, and then we'll see how we did compared to that plan. So we'll execute, and then we'll measure, and then we'll adjust to make sure that we've got it right. So when the National Procurement Oversight Committee sits down and we allocate those resources, we'll be able to have a trend with respect to how well we're doing against that, that benchmark.
Sorry, Deputy, did you want to jump? No, you're good. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Quickly.
Well, okay, I'll come back. I think we're hopefully use the time available. I would just mention, I do understand some of the readiness you were talking about. For 8 months, I was the defense critic for our, so I do have an understanding of that, and that's why when you were saying you needed to be ready, and I mouthed to the deputy, you don't want the opposite. That's an even bigger problem. It doesn't mean this one doesn't have to be managed, but I understand you can't push the button and have nothing happen when you do that. When you need something to move, it's got to move.
That's exactly it.
Thank you, Chair.
Jefferson, Mr. McColman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted just to ask a couple of general questions on policy. Does the department have policy regarding sole source contracts?
Yeah, the Government of Canada has policy regarding sole source contracts. So, Pat, do you want to?
They fall under the government contracting regulations. There's generally the 4 criteria under which we could choose to sole source. For all of our large contracts, we of course do that through procurement, Public Services and Procurement Canada, and in many cases Treasury Board. But there's absolutely a policy with 4 criteria.
And what are those 4 criteria?
Under $25,000, only one source of supply, not in the national interest, and an emergency. There are also, in the context, and this falls under the government contracting regulations at Treasury Board, there are also some caveats that were introduced by the previous government that allow us to step outside of the government contracting regulations, notably urgent operational requirements.
The first one you said was under 25,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's one of the first criteria. Okay. To the Auditor General, again, I know this is government policy, and Chair, if I'm veering here too much, please let me know. But from the Auditor General's point of view, in terms of the objective voice here, what is your view? What is your view of what's best practices regarding sourcing or procurement? Is it in every case where we can have a competitive bidding situation, best business practice, or in your view, is sole sourcing a practice that that should be, I guess, for sake of a better word, from the world I come from, tolerated?
Well, Mr. Chair, what we would do in our role is whenever there was an acquisition, no matter how it was done, sole source or competitive or, however it's done, what we would do is make sure that the rules have been appropriately followed and the decisions have been appropriately supported, right? So if there was a decision, for example, to sole source, we would look at the 4 criteria that were just mentioned, or we might look at this urgent operational requirement criteria. So what we would do is we would just go back and make sure that in any acquisition, the department had appropriately applied the rules and had documented why they felt that, it was an emergency situation or, it was a national interest question or whatever. Why did they feel that was the case? And did they seem to have appropriately supported, why they, if it was a sole source contract, why they chose that part of the sole source criteria to justify a sole source contract?
Okay, I was thank you for that. I'm also curious to see if there's any further comments to Mr. Fragaskatis. I'm sorry if I got your name incorrectly. I really liked your line of questioning in terms of pulling together a perspective on trends, on being able to use the collective knowledge for more effective use of hardworking taxpayers' dollars, frankly. You know, when I sit here as a parliamentarian and I look at you gentlemen, I don't envy the position you're in. We're pushing you hard. And we're pushing you hard on issues of value. And the Auditor General's pushing you hard on issues of value. But in your own personal lives, I suspect you're interested in getting value. And when you see some of some of what's uncovered in an Auditor General's report like this, you somehow get a little lost in perspective. Because this should not happen. I think we could all agree on that premise. And yet it's happened. And so, as an extension of my colleagues' earlier comments, and I said it earlier in a different way, what is really learned here? Can we not apply the simple value propositions that each of us use in our lives to make sure these things don't happen? Is that unreasonable to ask that question as a parliamentarian, as a person who's asking for scrutiny here in a very hard, difficult way to you? Like, these seem to me to be elements that should be worked into every discussion of every procurement of every item, right down to the boots the soldiers wear.
Mr. Forster.
I think that's a perfectly reasonable approach to take, and I would agree totally with it, both as a taxpayer and also as the Deputy Minister of the Department. If I'm wasting money in one area, that means I got less money to spend on equipment or readiness or training for the armed forces. So as I said earlier, I think the key lessons learned are, how do we do better planning up front? Do we need to lock in a certain level of availability, hours per year on an aircraft, or how do we get more flexibility to move it up and move it down? Recognize that there'll be a premium for some of that flexibility. So where's the balance there? How do we do better life cycle costing? And I've spoken today about the steps we've taken, and I believe actually we have taken significant steps in the last 18 months to improve how we do costing in this department. And the third is, how are we going to measure and track our performance? And that, I agree with everything the Auditor General has said. How do we get to do that better? It is a big, complex beast. It operates around the world 24/7, hundreds of platforms, millions of parts, and you know, we're running an airline, a trucking service, a hospital, you know, the works. And so, yeah, we need to do better, and that's what we're trying to do with our system. You should see what the Navy has done. They can go to any ship anywhere in the world 24/7 and know what the repair status is, know what maintenance has been done, what's scheduled, what needs to be done, what parts they're going to use, and that's the future direction we want to go. Much as you talked about your handheld device, we're doing that now on ships, and we want to do it around all the rest of the fleets. So the directions are there, the work is there, and but I think also it's always going to be you're going to want to do better and better and better, and there's never a final destination on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forster. Ms. Shanahan, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Then back to Mr. Christopherson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And I actually want to pick up on a few things. I think we're really getting to where we want to go in this. Really, it's an ongoing discussion, because I think it's not for nothing that you have appeared before us on different occasions, because there are many moving parts. And I'm always interested personally in how we can improve things going forward, and frankly, looking for signs that that there is learning going on, that there is using of outside knowledge as well. So to get to performance measurement, very interested, Mr. Lloyd, when you say that the performance in your world is not dollars and cents, but in actually sort of tangible outcomes. And just in passing, I had the occasion to visit a group of visiting Commonwealth parliamentarians in public accounts last week in Montreal, and one thing that they are looking to us for Mr. Ferguson, you'd be interested to hear that, is how we do performance measurement here in Canada, how the Auditor General's Office do that, and how we're doing that as a Public Accounts Office. So please talk to me about the things that you've learned about performance indicators, and then I would like to hear from Mr. Ferguson about what he sees can be improved.
I think the big challenge for a lot of us on performance indicators is the data to support them. So it's pretty easy to come up with great indicators, very often very difficult then to find an inexpensive, efficient way to collect that data. Government's now given us a pretty heavy task, which is to come up with a much more robust results framework. For all departments, but for the Department of National Defense, and Vice Admiral Lloyd is leading that work. Maybe I'll let him speak a bit to that. But
no, one of the key areas that clearly we have to have visibility in is to our spend. And so if we use the Navy as an example, the budget that the Navy has provided, now that we're able to leverage the financial aspects of DRIMIS, using these tools, I can now give you visibility into our spend across a number of activities. So we've broken up the Navy into various business lines, and now we have visibility into our spend, not in accordance with your vote, or whether it's personnel or whether it's reserves, but no kidding, what are the activities that you're spending money on. And now that you have visibility with respect to where your spend is, you can then see if it actually maps to your priorities. One of the things that we firmly believe is if you want to understand an organization's priorities, you track the money. And so now we're tracking the money to make sure that it aligns with the overall Navy's priorities, and we need to scale that across the department. We have learned a significant amount over the last 2 years with respect to performance measurement, and we've now been able to scale it not only from our financial, but into our material and into our personnel and training, and we're continuing to make consistent progress with respect to those initiatives.
So thank you, Vice Admiral. But would you say that you have two sets of performance indicators then, one that has to do with the financial and the other that has to do with outcomes, or somehow they're interrelated?
So as part of the departmental results framework, one of the things that we have to land on are these new key performance indicators. And so we're going right through with all the various L1s in the organization, and we're starting with a key performance question, and then we're using a logic model to then land on the key performance indicators is the manner in which we're going to approach that. We're then going to review the logic models and what it is they believe are their key performance indicators to make sure that it maps and aligns with what the Deputy Minister, the Chief of Defence Staff, and the Minister need to make informed decisions going forward. And then once we brief that, we'll have landed on our key performance indicators going forward.
Okay, thank you. And just for Mr. Ferguson, anything that you'd like to add, any observations you have about what should be performance indicators?
Well, I guess I'd start with, we understand that sometimes measuring performance can be a difficult thing to do, and particularly in a complex business like, national defense and the Canadian forces are in. It's it can be a difficult thing to do. So, I encourage whatever progress they can make on that. I think in terms of the report, fundamentally, the issue we raised was a very basic issue, which was that they had different measures for internal purposes than in their external, right? So I think just making sure that there is consistency between the information they're using internally to manage their operations and what they're reporting publicly on their performance, I think is sort of the base starting point, and that was really the issue that we raised here. So again, any progress that they can make in measuring and reporting on their performance, that will be, that's a good initiative. It's not something I can really report on. We haven't audited it. The issue we raised here was a fairly fundamental one, and one that they need to get right, even with what they're doing right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thompson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Time is quickly dwindling down. Let's stay with the debt, because I think this is so key. Now, I'm looking at page 18, where the Auditor General said because we just talked about external, internal. I raised the question earlier, why do we only do? I won't revisit that. That's all been dealt with. And you've committed to doing the internal too, and that's the main thing we wanted to hear from here. But in terms of the external, this is saying in 7.66, we examined whether National Defence managed contractor performance in accordance with contract requirements. We found that in some cases, due to poor quality of its data management, did not have the information that would allow it to properly measure contractor performance. So I guess I'm trying to get a sense of, is the external thing done and working the way it should? Because this leaves the impression that you kind of set it up, but there's still something there. Or am I mixing something else, which is easily done?
Thank you for the question. We have set it up, but we have work to do, and I'll give you a few examples. As we actually operationalize all this, this has to go out to all the bases, all the wings, all the deployed locations. And you can imagine, troops on the front line, ships at sea, et cetera, which may go through periods without connectivity, how much work we're actually giving them to do. So there are areas where we've set up what we think are really good contracts. We've negotiated with industry, key performance indicators and performance pieces, only to find that when we roll it out into the field and we have individual maintainers, we've increased their workload to an unacceptable level. So there are areas where we're now, as we operate these fleets for 2, 3, 4 years, at first, is it a training issue? What is it? What's occurring? I personally have been to Petawawa, Trenton, Halifax to meet with maintainers to talk about it. And there's areas, quite frankly, well-developed Ottawa-centric contract, roll it into the field, and their expectation on the maintainers is too much. So we're going back to those and saying, okay, then we have to reduce our understanding of the key performance indicators for that contract, renegotiate it. So that's where there's areas we've set it up, but the pipeline of information we've asked for is too much for the maintainers, sir.
I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb. I've heard a lot of answers from a lot of questions I've asked, and pardon the pun, but many times it's defensive answers. I'm liking the answers. What I'm liking is that I'm not hearing a lot of gobbledygook that I don't understand, because that usually suggests that that's being done deliberately, and we all been there. We know. I'm very impressed, I have to say, with the specificity of what you're doing and bringing in the external. Like, it really sounds like you're really actually doing it, as opposed to just trying to get through this meeting, which has been an ongoing problem for us. I may have to eat those words, but I have to tell you that, Deputy, so far, I appreciate, especially when you take your criticisms. Nothing drives us crazier than somebody comes in and starts making up nonsensical defenses for things that are plainly, just say you were wrong and fess up to it and let's get on. So I'm guardedly optimistic, but history slows me down from going any further than that. Just a couple of things that I might share, and then I'll wrap up. Again, on life cycle costs, I'm quoting from the report, Treasury Board policy requires that a department's investment plan take into account not just the acquisition of assets, but their full life cycle, including costs. The office found that the most recent National Defence Investment Plan from 2014 did not include the full cycle costs for the 6 types of equipment examined. I think you may have touched on this, but I'd like that closed. I gather you're now doing that?
Yes, sir.
And maybe I could just ask, sorry, but maybe I could just ask, that wasn't that long ago. That's right. Really, like, you completely missed it again. And when we're talking about life cycle, and the Auditor General is telling us in the latest update you've provided, it doesn't look like it's in there. Help me understand.
Okay. The Treasury Board policies on costing have evolved in even their last year. And actually, they match exactly where we've gone and are heading and invested this year. The 2014 plan did not include life cycle costs for all of our equipment, as I've indicated. Some of that costing didn't include sustainment costs. Some of it didn't. We didn't make allowances for inflationary costs. There were a lot of holes, in my view, when I first looked at it. And that's exactly why we've made all the investments and changes in how we do our costing. And our next investment plan, which is due at the end of this year, will include all of those provisions.
Two quick more questions if I can, Chair. Thank you for that answer, Deputy. Again, this is just, I just have to ask it. We're a bit past this, but it's the common sense stuff that makes me crazy, that missed. For instance, 7.33, page 11. Furthermore, when National Defence purchased a 5th Globemaster aircraft, its stated assumption was that it did not need additional personnel to support 5 Globemaster aircraft at the same flying level as the original 4. However, we found that acquiring the 5th aircraft increased the need for maintenance, requiring additional overtime to ensure the aircraft, like, duh, who the heck would say, yeah, we're going to buy, these are big, big planes. They're going to add a 5th plane, but it won't cost anything. Who decided that made sense? And how did they get there? And why did they have their job at the end of it?
Mr. Christopherson, Mr. Finn, please.
So quickly, the point of the 5th, so how we operate the C-17s is what's called 3 lines of tasking. So at any given time, we have 3 aircraft available for missions. As these aircraft start to age, the amount of time they have to be in maintenance increases. There's larger maintenance activities. So looking forward at 4, by virtue of overlap of heavy maintenance, we found ourselves in periods where we were going to have basically 2.5 lines of operation, which meant 2. So acquiring the 5th C-17 from a strategic decision perspective was to maintain 3 lines of operation, was the fact that not that we would have more maintainers, but that we would actually be rotating more aircraft through industry as they aged further. So that was the rationale. That's what occurred. There are periods where, again, we don't always have 2 in maintenance. We have kind of 1, so we go from 3 to 4, even with 5. And there are periods where, yeah, the Air Force finds themselves more aircraft, which they want to use, I think, for good purpose for Canadians. But the rationale was it took 5 to maintain 3 lines of operations, sir. That was why we did that.
Right.
Well, there are big periods of time where, in fact, we're just approaching the point now where we have more aircrafts going into heavy maintenance. So, in fact, we will only have 3 at Trenton, for which they are, in fact, have the maintainers, have the spares, have the ability to do it when they have 3. So actually creating the capacity for 4 when pretty much on a go-forward basis there will only be 3 airplanes there would equally be a problem, because again, we'd be paying for too many maintainers for not enough aircraft if we did that.
Thank you. I thank you for appearing before us today. I know that I think everyone assumes that procurement and value for money spent in defense is a very tough one to track. And so whether it's in Canada or United States or Australia or around the world, but Canadians and taxpayers also expect that we are putting in measures to maximize that type of efficiencies and certainty that we do find value for our money spent. So thank you for coming. We'll be following up on this. I would encourage you that if you leave here and think, I could have supplemented an answer, maybe I was cut off, and I would like to do that, we would encourage you to forward those answers in. And our committee will be drawing up a report on our meeting today and on this study. And so thank you for being a part of that and appearing, and thank you, committee, for your good work. We are now adjourned.